I think that's perfect. Although I can't see the entrance to my house, just in case. Alright, where have we finished? The priest environment pod was halfway up the tree ship, far out on a secondary branch. As the council expected, the camlog direction Waffer Headmastin had given him also served as a palm lock override. After useless minutes tapping the announcer chime and pounding on the access portal, the council triggered the override and stepped into the pod. Father Hoyt was on his knees, writing in the center of the grass carpet. Bedclothes, gear, garments, and the contents of a standard medkit were strewn on the floor around him. He had torn off his tunic and collar and sweated through his shirt so that it now hung in damp folds, ripped and tattered where he had clawed through the fabric. Hyperion lights speeded through the pod wall, making the bizarre tableau appear to be what's tableau? Bizarre tableau. Tableau. A group of models or motionless figures representing a scene from a story or from history. Right. Tableau, like some inscenization model, but tableau appeared to be staggered underwater or through the console in a cathedral. Leonard Hoyt's face contorted in an agony as his hands raked his chest. Muscles on his exposed forearms writhed like living creatures moving beneath his palm of skin. The injector malfunctioned, gasped Hoyt. Please. The consul nodded, commanded the door to close and kneeled next to the priest. He removed the useless injector from Hoyt's clutched first and ejected the serrate ampule. Ultramorphine. The consul nodded again and took out the injector from the medkit he had brought from his ship. It took less than 5 seconds to load the ultramorph. Please, begged Hoyt. His whole body spasmed. The consul could almost see the waves of pain passing through the man. Yes, said the consul. He took a ragged breath. But first, the rest of the story. Hoyt stared, reached weakly for the injector. Sweating himself now, the consul held the instrument just out of reach. Yes, in a second, he said. After the rest of the story, it's important that I know. Oh God, sweet child, sobbed Hoyt. Please. Yes, gasped the consul. Yes. As soon as you tell me the truth. Father Hoyt collapsed onto his forearms, breathing in quick pants. You fucking bastard, he gasped. The priest took several deep breaths, held one until his body quit shaking and tried to sit up. When he looked at the consul, there was something like relief in the maddened eyes. Then, you'll give me the shot. Yes, said the consul. All right, Hoyt managed in a sour whisper. The truth. Percival Plantation, like I said. We flew in early October, Lucius. Early years after Dure disappeared. Oh Christ, it hurts. Alcohol and endos don't work at all anymore. Only pure ultramorph. Yes, whispered the consul. It's ready. As soon as the story is done. The priest lowered his head. Sweat dripped from his cheek and nose onto the short grass. The consul saw the man's muscles tense. If he were going to attack, then another spasm of pain racked the thin body of Hoyt, sagged forward. Schemer wasn't destroyed by Tesla. Sempha, 2 men and I, forced down near the cleft while Orlandi surged upriver. His schemer had to wait while the lightning storm died down. Bikura came in the night, killed Sempha, the pilot, the other man. Forget his name. Left me alive. Hoyt reached for his crucifix, reached that he had torn it off. He laughed briefly, stopping before the laughter turned to sobs. They told me about the way of the cross, about the cruciform, told me about the son of the flames. Next morning they took me to see the son, took me to see him. Hoyt struggled upright and clawed at his own cheeks. His eyes were wide and Ultramorph obviously forgotten despite the pain. About 3 kilometers into the flame forest, big Tesla, 100 meters tall, at least. Quite then, but still a lot. A lot of charge in the air, ash everywhere. The Bikura wouldn't go too close, just knelt there with their goddamn bald heads bowed. But I went close, had to. Dear God, oh Christ, it was him, Dure, what was left of him. He'd used a ladder to get three. He'd used a ladder to get 3, maybe 4 meters, up on the bole of the tree, built a sort of platform for his feet, broken the arrestor rods of little more than spikes, then sharpened them. Must have used a rock to drive the long one through his feet into the bestest platform and tree. His left arm, he'd pounded the stake between his radius and ulna, missed veins, just like the goddamned Romans. Very secure as long as his skeleton was intact. Other hand, right hand, palm down, he'd driven the spike first, sharpened both ends, then impelled his right hand, somehow bent the spike over, hook. Ladder'd fallen long ago, but it was asbestos. Hadn't burned, used it to climb up the hill. Everything burned away years ago, clothes, skin, top layers of flesh, but the asbestos pouch was still around his neck. The alloy spikes still conducted current even when I could see it. Feel it, surging through what was left of the body. It still looked like port dure, important. I told Monsieur, no skin, flesh raw or boiled away. Nerves and things visible, like grey and yellow roots. Creased, the smell, but it still looked like port dure. I understood then, understood it all. Somehow, even before reading the journals, understood he'd been hanging there. Oh dear God, 7 years. Leaving, dying, the cruciform, forcing him to live again. Electricity, surging through him every second of those 7 years. Flaming hunger, pain, death. But somehow, the goddamned cruciform, leaching substance from the tree maybe, the air that was left, rebuilding that it could, forcing him to leave, to feel the pain over and over. But he won. Pain was his ally. Oh Jesus! Not a few hours on the tree and then the spear and rest, but 7 years? But he won. When I removed the pouch, the cruciform on his chest fell away also. Just fell right off. Long bloody rods. Then the thing I've been sure was a corpse. The man raised its head. No eyelids. Eyes baked wide. Lips gone. But it looked at me and smiled. He smiled. And he died, really died, there in my arms. The 10,000th time, but real this time, he smiled at me and died. Hoyt stopped, communed in silence with his own pain, and then continued between both of clicking his teeth. Bikura took me back to Cleft. Orlandi came the next day, rescued me. He, Semfa, I couldn't. He lacered the village, burned the Bikura where they stood like stupid sheep. I didn't argue with him. I laughed. Dear God, forgive me. Orlandi nuked the site with shaped charges they used to clear the jungle. Fiber plastic matrix. Hoyt looked directly at the console and made a concerted gesture with his right hand. The painkillers worked all right at first, but every year, every day got worse. Even in Fugu, what is that word? Fugue, even in fugue, a contrapuntal composition in which a short melody or phrase is introduced by one part and successively taken by up by odor and developed by interweaving the parts. Even in fugue, the pain, I would have had to come back away. Could he 7 years? How could he 7 years? Oh Jesus, said Haddeford, and clawed at the carpet. The consul moved quickly, injecting the full ampule of ultramorph just under the armpit, catching the priest as he collapsed and gently lowering the unconscious form to the floor. His vision unclear, the consul ripped open Hoyt's sweet sodden shirt, casting the rags aside. It was there, of course, lying under the pale skin of Hoyt's chest like some great raw cross-shaped worm. The consul took a breath and gently turned the priest over. The second cruciform was there. He had expected to find it a slightly smaller, cross-shaped well between the thin man's shoulder blades. It stirred slightly as the consul's fingers brushed the fevered flesh. The consul moved slowly but efficiently, packing the priest's belongings, straightening the room, dressing the unconscious man with the gentle care one would use in clothing the body of a dead family member. The consul's camlock buzzed. "We need to go," came Colonel Cassett's voice. "We're coming," replied the consul. He coded the camlock to summon crew clones to fetch the luggage, but lifted Father Hoyt himself. The body seemed to weigh nothing. The poor door dilated open and the consul stepped out, moving from the deep shadows of the branch into the blue-green glow of the world which filled the sky. Deciding what cover story he would tell the others, the consul paused a second and looked at the sleeping man's face. He glanced up at Hyperion and then moved on. Even if the gravity field had been full Earth standard, the consul knew the body in his arms would have been no burden. Once parent to a child, now dead, the consul walked on, knowing once again the sensation of bearing a sleeping son to bed. 2. It had been a warm, rainy day in Keats, Hyperion's capital, and even after the rain stopped, a layer of clouds moved slow and heavily over the city, filling the air with the salt scent of the oceans 20 kilometers to the west. Towards evening, as the grey daylight was beginning to fade into the grey twilight, a double sonic boom shook the town and then echoed from the single sculptured peak to the south. The clouds glowed blue-white. Half a minute later, an ebony spacecraft broke through the overcast and descended carefully on the tail of fusion flame, its navigation lights blinking red and green against the grey. At the 1,000 meters, the craft landing beacons flared and 3 beams of coherent light from the spaceport north of town locked the ship in the welcoming 2B tripod. The spacecraft hovered at 300 meters, slipped sideways as smoothly as a mug sliding on a wet tabletop, and then settled weightlessly on a waiting blast pit. High-pressure jets of water battered the pit and the base of the ship, sending up billows of steam to blend with the surtain of drizzle blowing across the paved plain of the spaceport. When the water jets ceased, there was no noise except the whisper of rain and random ticks and cracks of the cooling spaceship. A balcony extruded itself from the ship's bulkhead 20 meters above the pit wall. 5 figures emerged. "Thank you for the ride, sir," Colonel Cassatt said to the consul. The consul nodded and leaned on the railing, taking deep breaths of fresh air. Droplets of rain beaded on his shoulders and eyebrows. So Solwale Broom lifted his baby from her infant carrier. Some change in pressure, temperature, scent, motion, noise, or a combination of all of these had awakened her, and now she began to cry lustily. Weidebaum bounced her and called to her, but the wailing continued. An appropriate comment upon our arrival, said Martin Silenus. The poet wore a long purple cape and a rare beret which slouched to his right shoulder. He took a drink from a wine glass he had carried out from the luggage. Christ on a stick. This place looked different. The consul, who had been away only 8 local years, had to agree. The spaceport has been a full 9 clicks from the city when he lived in Kitts. Now shacks, tents, and mud streets surrendered the landing field's perimeter. In the consul's day, no more than a ship a week had to pull it at the tiny spaceport. Now the country had more than 20 spacecraft on the field. The small administration and customs building had been suppressed by a huge prefabricated structure. Superseded by a huge prefabricated structure. A dozen new blast pits and dropship grids had been added where the field had been hastily extended to the west, and the perimeter now was littered with scores of camouflage-shaded modules which the consul knew must serve as everything from ground control station to barracks. A forest of exotic antenna grew skywards from a cluster of such boxes at the far end of the landing apron. Progress, murmured the consul. War, said Colonel Cust. Those are people, said Brown Lamia, pointing towards the main terminal gates on the south side of the field. A wave of drab colors crashed like a silent surf against the outer fence and the violet contaminated field. My God, said the consul, you're right. Cassat produced his binoculars, and they took turns staring at the thousands of forms tugging at the wire, pressing against the repelling field. Why are they here? Asked Klima. What do they want? Even from half a kilometer away, the mindless wheel of the mob was daunting. Dark forms of force, marines, could be seen patrolling just within the perimeter. The consul realized that between the wire, the contaminated field, and the marines, a strip of raw earth, almost surgically signified mines or a dead beam zone, or both. What do they want? Repeated Lamia. They want out, said Cassat. Even before the colonel spoke, the consul realized that the shack city around the spaceport and the mob at the gates were inevitable. The people of Hyperion were ready to leave. He guessed that there must be such a silent surge towards the gates each time a ship landed. Well, there's one who will be staying, said Martin Silenus, and pointed towards the low mountain across the river to the south. Old Weeping William Rex, God rest his sinful soul. The sculptured face of sad King Billy was just visible through the light rain and growing darkness. I knew him, Horato, said the drunken poet. A man on infinite jest, no one of them funny, a real horse-ass. Horatio. Saul Whiteburn stood just inside the ship, shielding his baby from the drizzle and removing her cries from the vicinity of the conversation. He pointed, someone is coming. A ground car with its camouflage polymer inert and a military EMV modified with hover fans for Hyperion's weak magnetic field were crossing the damp hardpan. Martin Silenus' gaze never left sad King Billy's door village. Silenus said in a voice almost too soft to be heard, "Deep in the shady sadness of Whale, far sunken from healthy birth of morn, far from the fiery noon, the eve's one star, sat grey-haired Saturn, quiet as a stone. I'm shitty and dead, still as the silence round about his lair, forest on forest hung above his head, like cloud on cloud." Father Hoyt came onto the balcony, rubbing his face with both hands. His eyes were wide and unfocused. A child rising from his nap. "Are we there?" he asked. "Fucking aye," carried Martin Serenus, returning the binoculars to the colonel. "Let's go down and greet the gendarmes." The young Marine lieutenant seemed unimpressed with the group even after he had scanned the authorization waffer Mastin had passed along from the task force commander. The lieutenant took his time scanning their visa chips, sending them wait in the drizzle, occasionally making a comment with the idle arrogance common to such nobodies who have just come into a small bit of power. Then he came to Foreman's Cassad chips and looked up with the expression of a starlit scout. "Colonel Cassad." "Retired," said Cassad. "I'm sorry, sir," said the lieutenant, stumbling over his words, and he stumbled the visas back to Evro. "I had no idea you were with this party, sir." "That is, Captain just said. I mean, my uncle was with you on Brescia, sir. I'm sorry. Anything I or me men can do." At ease, Lieutenant," said command. "It were any chance you getting some transport into the city?" "Oh, well, sir." The young Marine started. They rubbed his chain and then remembered that he was wearing his helmet. "Yes, sir, but the problem is, sir, the mobs can get pretty nasty and, well, them EMVs don't work for shit on this. Pardon me, sir. You see, the ground transports were limited to cargo, and we don't have any skimmers free to leave the base until 10 p.m. But I'll be happy to get you party on the roster for." "Just a minute," said the consul. A battered passenger skimmed with the gold geodesic of the hegemony paint on the flare skirt had landed 2 meters away. A tall, thin man stepped out. Theo, cried the consul. The two men stepped forward, started to shake hands, and then hugged each other instead. "Damn," said the consul, "you look good, Theo." It was true. His former eye had gained half a dozen years on the consul, but the younger man still had the boyish smile, thin face, and thick red hair that had attracted every unmarried woman, and not a few married ones. On the consulate staff, the shyness which has been part of Theo's Lane's vulnerability was still there, as evidence to the way he had needlessly adjusted his archaic rimmed glasses. The young diplomat's one affection. "It's good to have you back," said Theo. The consul turned, started to introduce his friends to the group, and then stopped. "My God," he said, "you're a consul now." "I'm sorry, Theo. I wasn't thinking." Theo Lane smiled and adjusted his glasses. "No problem, sir," he said. "Actually, I am no longer consul. For the last few months, I've been acting governor general." The Home Rule Council finally requested and received formal colonial status. "Welcome to the newest world in the hegemony." The consul stared a second and then hugged his former protege again. "Congratulations, Your Excellency." Theo grinned and glanced at the sky. "It's going to rain at nearest before long. Why don't we get your group aboard the skimmer and I'll drive you into the town?" The new Governor General smiled at the young Marine lieutenant. "Lieutenant?" "Yes, sir." The officer had snapped to attention. "Could you get your man to load those good people's luggage, please? We'd all like to get in out of the rain." The skimmer flew south above the highway at a steady 60 meters. The consul rode in the front passenger seat. The rest of the group relaxed in flow foam recliners behind. Martin Silenus and Father Hoyt appeared to be asleep. Winterburn's baby had ceased crying in favor of nursing on a soft bottle of synthesized milks. "Things have changed," said the consul. he rested his cheek against the rain-splattered canopy and looked down at the chaos. Thousands of shacks and lean toss covered the hillsides, and gullies along the tree kicked right to the suburbs. Fires were being lighted under wet tarps, and the console watched mood-colored figures moving between mood-colored shacks. High fences had been rigged along the old spaceport highway, and the road itself had been widened and regraded. 2 lanes of truck and Hoover traffic, most of it military green or shouldered with inactive camouflage polymer, moved sluggishly in both directions. Ahead, the lights of kids seems to have multiplied and spread across new sections of the river's valley and hills. 3 million, said Theo, as if reading his former boss minds. At least 3 million people, and growing every day. The consul stared. There were only 4.5 million people on the planet when I left. Still are, said the new government general, and every one of them wants to get to kids, board a ship and get the hell out. Some are waiting for the forecaster to be built, but most don't believe it'll happen in time. They are afraid. Of the outstairs? Them too, said Theo, but mostly of the Shrike. The consul turned his face from the coolness from the canopy. It's come south from the bridge range then? Theo laughed without humor. It's everywhere, or they're everywhere. Most people are convinced that there were dozens of or hundreds of the things now. Shrike deaths have been reported on all 3 continents, everywhere except Keats, segments of the coast along the main, and a few of the big cities like Endymion. How many casualties? The consul did not really want to know. At least 20,000 dead or missing, said Theo. There are a lot of injured people, but that isn't the Shrike, isn't it? Again, come the dry laugh. The Shrike doesn't just wound people, doesn't it? Oh, people. People shoot each other by accident, fall down staircase, or jump out windows in their panic, and trample each other in crowds. It's a fucking mess. In the 11 years of consul had worked with detain Leo, he had never heard a younger man use profanity of any sort of "is force any help?" The consul asked, "Are they ones to keeping the Shrike away from the big cities?" Theo shook his head. Force hasn't done a damn thing except control the mobs. Oh, here the mimes put on show of keeping the spaceport open here and the harbor landing zone at Port Air secure, but they haven't even tried to confront the Shrike. They're waiting to fight the outsters. Outsters? SDF? Asked Consul, knowing even as he spoke that the poorly trained self-defense force would have been of little use. Theo snored. At least 8,000 of the casualties are SDF. General Braxton took the fighting third up the river road to strike at the Shrike menace in their lair. And that was the last we heard of them. You're joking, said Consul. But one look at his friend's face told him that he wasn't. Theo, he said, how in the world did you have time to meet up at the spaceport? I didn't, said the government general. He glanced in the bag. The others were sleeping or staring exhaustlessly out windows. I needed to talk to you, said Theo. Convince you not to go. The consul started to shake his head, but Theo grasped his arm, squeezed hard. Now listen to what I have to say, damn it. I know how hard it is for you to come back here after what happened, but goddammit, there's no sense in your throwing everything away for no reason. Abandon this stupid privilege. Stay in kids. I can't, began the consul. Listen to me, damn Theo. Reason 1, you're the finest diplomat and crisis manager I've ever seen, and we need your skills. It doesn't... Shut up a minute. Reason 2, you and the other... Finishing that. Squirrels are running around, playing games, chasing I can see you! The group stopped out and stared at charcoal on top of the wreckage, and it had been Shrike Temple. Wreckage of what has been the Shrike Temple. Stared at the charred and toppled wreckage of what had been the Shrike Temple. Since the time Tom's has been closed as too dangerous some 25 local years earlier, the Shrike Temple had become Hyperion's most popular tourist attraction, filling 3 full city blocks, rising more than 150 meters to its central, sharpened spire. The Shrike Church Central Temple was part of inspiring cathedral, part Gothic joke with its fluid but tressed curves of stone, permabondade to its whiskered alloy skeleton, part Escher print with its tricks of perspective and impossible angles, part Boschian nightmare with its tunnel entrances, hidden chambers, dark gardens and forbidden sections, and more than anything else, it had been a part of a Hyperion's past. Now it was gone. Tall heaps of blackened stone were the only hint of the structure's former majesty. Melted alloy ginders rose from the stone like the ribs of some giant carcass. Much of the rubble had tumbled into the pits, basements and passages which had lain beneath the 3-century-old landmark. The consul walked close to the edge of a pit and wondered if the deep basements had, as legend decreed, actually connected to one of the planet's labyrinth. It looks as if they used a hell whip of this place, said Martin Silenus, using an archaic term of any high-energy laser weapon. The poet seemed suddenly sobered as he joined the consul at the ledge of the pit. I remember when the temple and parts of the old city were the only things here, he said. After the disaster near the tombs, Billy decided to relocate Jacktown here because of the temple. Now it's gone, Christ. No, said Cossack. The others looked at him. The colonel rose from where he had been examining the rubble. Not a hell whip, he said. Shaped plasma charge, several of them. Now, do you want to stay here and go on this useless pilgrimage? Asked Theo. Come with me back to the consulate. He was speaking to the consul, but extending the invitation to everyone. The consul turned away from the pit, looking at his former eyed, but now seeing for the first time the Governor-General as of a besieged hegemony world. We can't, Your Excellency, said the consul. At least I can't. I won't speak for the others. The 4 men and the woman shook their heads. Silenus and Cassad began unloading luggage. The rain returned as a light mist failing out of the darkness. At that second consul noticed the 2 force attack skimmers howling above the nearby rooftops. Darkness and chameleon polymer hulls had hidden them well, but the rain now revealed their outlines. Of course, through the consul, the Governor-General does not travel unescorted. Did the priests escape? Were there survivors? Then the temple was destroyed, asked Brony Lamia. Yes, said Theo. The de facto director of 5 million doomed soul removed his glasses and tried them on his shirt tail. All of the Shrike cult priests and acolytes escaped through tunnels. The mob had been surrounding this place for months. Their leader, a woman named Camon, from somewhere east of the Sea of Grass, gave everyone in the temple plenty of warning before they set off the DL-20. Where were the police? Asked the consul. The SDF force. Theo Lane smiled, and at that second he looked decades older than the young man the consul had known. You folks has been in transit for 3 years, he said. The universe has changed. Shrike cultists are being burned out and beaten up in the web. You can imagine the attitude here. The kids' police have been absorbed under the martial law I declared 14 months ago. They had, and the SDF watched while the mob torched the temple. So did I. There were 500,000 people here that night. Saul Windeburst stepped closer. Do they know about us? About this final privilege? If they did, said Theo, none of you would be alive. You'd think they'll welcome anything that might appease the Shrike, but the only thing the mob would notice is that you were chosen by the Shrike Church. As it was, I had to overrule my own advisory council. They were in favor of destroying your ship before it reached the atmosphere. Why did you, asked the consul, overrule them, I mean? Theo signed and adjusted his glasses. Hyperion still needs the hegemony, and Gladstone still had the vote of confidence of the all things, if not the Senate. And I still need you. The consul looked at the rubbed and strike temple. This pilgrimage was over before you got here, said Government General Theo Lane. Will you come back to the consulate with me, at least in an advisory capacity? I'm sorry, said Consul. I can't. Theo turned without a word, dropped into the skimmer and lifted off. His military escort followed as a blur in the rain. It was raining harder now. The group moved closer together and in the growing darkness. Widerburn Weintraub had rigged a makeshift hood over Rachel, and the noise of the rain on plastic made the baby cry. What's now? Said the consul, looking around the night and narrow streets. Their luggage lay happened in a soggy pile. The world smelled of ashes. Martin still in his grind. I know a bar. Alright, I'm gonna finish here.